the host, Ragwan, and this is my co-host, Trissa. And so this is a joint event between HKN and ACM. And so this panel is going to be mainly around answering your questions that the guests have. So before we get into that, can every panel member just quickly introduce themselves before we dive right into the questions?
Sure, I can start. Hello everyone, I'm Imon. I just graduated from UCSD this past December, and I was a computer engineering major in Warren College. Right now I work at Facebook.
I'll go. So I'm not a full-time employee unlike the rest of the panelists, but my name is Emily, if y'all don't know. But I am a past Google intern, and I'm returning to Google again this summer as a software engineering intern.
Hi, I'm Sabil. Actually, so just like Emily, I also am not full-time yet, but I was an intern at Amazon last summer, and then after graduating, I'll be at Amazon again this summer.
Hi, my name is Carl. I just graduated last spring, and I currently work at Google.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm Aniket. I graduated like 2 years ago. Somehow Keshav has decided to pull me back into UCSD shit. Software engineer at Facebook. I just moved to New York, living the best quarantine life.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know Aniket, he was like Rico's lead tutor along with Imang, I think.
Oh, and I just realized Luyanda's here, so if Luyanda wants to introduce himself. I think he's connecting.
Hi everyone, sorry I'm a bit late. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Hi, yeah, my name is Leonda. I'm a machine learning engineer here at Microsoft in Seattle, and yeah, I'm glad to be here. Sorry I'm a bit late.
Okay, I think that's all the panelists. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, we're gonna dive right into it. So we put out a little question form on the Facebook event. And so we're just gonna go through those first before we turn it over to a live Q&A. And yeah, that should be the gist of how this event will go. So the first question that we have, and any panelists that feel like they're qualified or they wanna talk about it can just quickly talk about it if they'd like to answer it. What are your thoughts on pursuing a project manager / product manager role instead of becoming a software / hardware engineer? Are there any pros and cons?
So I'm not a PM. I am a software engineer, but I have pursued PM roles in the past. This past year, I interviewed with Microsoft and received an offer for a PM role. And I had like the hardest time of my life trying to decide between whether or not I wanted to do software engineering or whether or not I wanted to do product management. And what basically made the decision for me, weirdly enough, is not even the week, it's like 2 days before my interview, I was on a plane ride. And I sat next to a woman who was in project management for 50 years. And I'm just going to say what the advice that she gave me when I asked her for advice on whether or not to choose between software engineering and product management. I think product management is great. She loves product management. And you can definitely make the switch between software engineering and product management and software engineering all times, anytime. But one of the things that she said to me that really struck a chord was that product management will always be around for you. Whereas right now, if you're going for like a software engineering role, it's kind of at a boom right now. We're kind of in the middle of the computer revolution, and like the pay is like super high right now. And I asked her if she could do it all over again, what would she choose? And she told me that she would honestly start off with engineering and then transfer to product management because she feels like a lot of the technical knowledge would have helped her out a lot in her role as a product manager. That being said, I think both roles are fine, and a lot of the skills a lot of the skills that you learn in either role can help apply to the other.
I think I'd like to further comment on that. So right now, even though I'm an engineer, I actually was a PM intern at Tesla, and I got to work with a lot of PM interns. I mean, a lot of project managers who had been PMs at Apple, Google, all these big companies. And what they mentioned was, if you want to be successful as a program manager, often people think you can like skip the steps of like learning your technical skills really well. And I think that's a mistake that people make early on in their careers, because if you feel proficient technically, you're able to make better business decisions. You're able to join the business impact and the technological side of anything better. So the whole idea that I've had around like my career early on is kind of like, okay, I see that I want to manage these big projects and stuff, but I really need to build the technical skills. So I'm entering in as an engineer, building that knowledge, building that skill set, building that understanding how engineers feel in general, so that if I do eventually choose to move into that PM role, it would be coming from a space where I actually know what the people I'll be working with are going through. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on really quickly that at least at Amazon, I think it's a pretty fluid thing if you want to, start out as a software engineer and then work your way through either, software development management or even product management. It's a fairly fluid transition. So I think like if you're super stressed about which one you want to do, don't be, because, either one that you end up picking and getting whatever experience, like both Emily and Leonda said, you can kind of transition those skills over pretty easily and seamlessly.
Okay, cool. We'll go to the next question. Recruiters at job fairs always seem to be looking for very specific qualities in potential interns or new hires. If you were an undergrad trying to obtain an internship at your company, how would you approach a recruiter? Is there anything specific you would do to set yourself apart?
Okay, I'll jump in then. Okay, so I am a current undergrad who does go to career fairs and does try to stand out to recruiters. The way I try and stand out from the crowd is by not trying to have the same exact elevator pitch per company. I try and cater to every elevator pitch that I give towards the specific company that I am talking to. And so a good way of doing that is you can, before you talk to the company while you're in line, you just do a bit of research and then see like how they relate to you. But what I think the companies that I've been most successful with are companies whose products I actually use and companies I feel an intimate connection with. Those are definitely the best. And then one huge piece of advice I can also give is when you're giving a pitch at a career fair, you should try to have a conversation with the recruiter or engineer you're talking to. So don't just make it like you're giving a presentation and you're just talking about yourself. Give them the chance to speak as well. Conversations should be back and forth. It shouldn't just be you talking. They should be talking as well, and you should be listening. And oftentimes, by listening to the recruiter or the engineer, you can learn a lot about the company. And not only can you learn a lot about the company, you can find a strong connection with the recruiter or engineer. And that's a good way to make yourself stand out. Just because so many students out there go to recruiters or engineers and they just, have this perfectly practiced elevator pitch and they just, talk about their whole like experience. But really what a lot of recruiters and engineers I think want to see is they want to see that you're a person that they're interested in, like you're an actual person and you're someone they're interested in hiring, and you want to showcase your personality. And I think the best way to do that is having a one-on-one conversation, not just a presentation.
I think another thing that goes a long way in setting yourself apart, especially if you are amongst thousands of students at these career fairs, is really taking a step. And like one thing that helped me get my first internship at Microsoft was really taking a step back and thinking, okay, what unique skills and abilities do I bring to any team? And really understanding that, hey, like if you ask me to write the most efficient algorithm, I'm not your guy. But if you ask me to implement something quickly, read documentation and present something quickly, or like, that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about learning about new types of tech. And taking a step back and understanding who you are and like what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are too. And then making sure that the recruiter is aware of that so that you can speak passionately about it, being like, hey, like, if you're looking for someone who can like I wouldn't go straight ahead to a recruiter and be like, hey, I don't know all the algorithms well. No, don't do that. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. But if you have a particular set of skills that is unique and you feel that brings value to any team that you work in, really making those clear, because then you stand apart, because no one can beat you at being you but you, you know, no one can be a better you than you. So once you really understand who you are and the space that you will take and the impact that you'll have, it gives you that leverage. It gives you that ability to present yourself a lot better.
Okay, if anyone else has any other input, or can we move on to the next question?
Oh, I want to add like onto Emily, like if you are able to create that conversation, that's also great. The thing I really wanted to say was that it's mostly if you try to talk to a recruiter, you shouldn't really just enumerate all the stuff you can do. Like, these are the information that they can find reading your resume. I think what's not on your resume is like why you did something. Like, if you worked on a project, like what was your role in that project and why you liked or didn't like it, or yeah, just like tell a story, and that will open up conversations.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the third question. If I don't have any internship experience as a graduate, should I pursue an internship or full-time?
Do you mean like you want to delay graduation in order to do an internship? Well, I guess I would suggest try full-time, applying for full-time, because like internship, well, it's a great way to, internship is always great to give you more experience, but then if you're going to graduate, then I think you should just go for the full-time.
I will add on to that. Actually, a lot of companies do have requirements when they decide if they want to give you an internship offer. And one of the prerequisite conditions is that you are currently enrolled at a university. So more often than not, it's probably not going to be possible to get an internship. You can always sneak your way in, but definitely would not recommend. But in a position where you haven't had internships yet, the best way to prepare for getting a full-time position, which is the thing I recommend doing, is just trying to work on as many projects as possible, trying to build up your resume. Anything you can think, like, it kind of goes back to like the last question, where you really want to sell yourself and show that you're interested in working there. And like now, like internships basically let companies like kind of have like a 12-week interview process where they just like get to know you a little bit and they get like a lot more data about you. So kind of lose out on that by not having an internship, but you can definitely make up for it by showing that you are really interested and passionate about what specific companies do, like, or just generally like you are really interested in like say machine learning. And if you can demonstrate that you are capable of like independently pursuing that, it will help you a lot.
Yeah. But one thing I found is the full-time interview is much harder than the internship interviews. So like start early. Like if you could get internship, that's much better, I think. Like, oh, also do practice like lead code and stuff to prepare for the interviews, and do mock interviews. Those are helpful.
I can't speak for most companies, but specifically for Google, there's a program called an engineer residency. So it's like kind of comparable to an internship where you do go, but instead of like just the summer, it's actually like a full year program where you go into 2 teams and you like start a small project, and towards the end you would hopefully convert into a full-time. So that's another option to look at.
Okay, if nobody else has anything to say, we can move on to the next question. Okay, how do you effectively navigate Google host matching? If you get a host with a project you don't like at the end of your host matching phase, should you still interview and show pseudo interest?
Yes. That's all I have to say. Google host matching, the whole process, in my opinion, is a bit too complicated and difficult to navigate, and it's really a luck of the draw. So any point or semblance of interest you have, really just like push on that. It's always easy once you're in to move around and change around, or a lot easier. So even if it's just something that you're not completely interested in, just like really push hard on it, and it can turn into another opportunity. But completely closing that door is something that I would not recommend, in my opinion, though.
I'm gonna agree with that. I've gone through Google host matching twice, and I think it's one of the worst interview processes out there, honestly. Like, I really don't like Google host matching, but the reality is, I think if you have any sort of match at all, I would go ahead and try your best to secure it. Like Lou said, you can move around once you're in Google, not for an internship, but as a full-timer, you can move around. For your internship, even though you can't move around, at the end of the day, it's a Google internship. Like, it's a big deal, and it'll look really good on your resume, and it'll help get you towards the next internship, and it allows you to be more picky when you go for future internships or when you go for full-time roles. If you're going to be picky and it's like your first internship, I'm going to recommend that you don't be picky. You take what you get and realize that whatever you can get a hold of, it will carry you on throughout the rest of your career. Again, it's only 2 months of you working on a project that maybe you're not that passionate about, but it can lead to you working on a passion that you're about for the rest of your life. So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with both of them. Like internal jumping within like groups is way easier than like jumping to another company. Yeah.
I would also like to add some sentiments here, especially about when you're going. Oh, okay. First of all, work at Facebook, much better experience. A plus, would recommend. But more seriously, and this applies more for internships. You should definitely not focus like entirely on getting like the most perfect project for yourself, because a lot of the times like the value that you get out of an internship goes beyond just like building your technical skills, right? A lot of it is about being able to work in like a corporate environment, getting used to like just being given like a problem and then having to solve it, having to communicate effectively. These are all skills that you really don't learn at school. And internships are just like the best way to develop all of that. Other thing is, even if you don't get onto the team that you want, you can, since you're at the same company, you can spend at least a little bit of your time showing initiative and like trying to talk to the managers on that team, trying to get to know the engineers and just building some connections. And then the next time you have to go down, that will be really helpful because all these people will try their best to support you. Right? Because it's in everyone's interest to make sure that what you are interested in is what you actually work on, because that's like the company's only interest is to make sure that you're as productive as possible. And by making sure that you work on the things that you like, they basically guarantee that. So it is in everyone's interest to find the best match. It's just you have to sometimes do like a little bit of the legwork and kind of accept something that's not 100% optimal.
Okay. I guess we'll move on to the next question then. How do you find referrals?
Go to events like this. and like just try to network, and then try to talk to people. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Actually, the way I got my referral is kind of weird. So there's a Facebook group called the Resume Critique or something, and then I basically just sent a message to the admin of the group and say like, can you give me some advice for my resume? And then he took a look at my resume and then gave me some advice. He's a really nice person, and he said like, I can refer you to wherever he was working at. So basically, that's how I got my referral.
Yeah, I can admit, like, I agree with that. Just going to events and also trying to build like genuine relationships with people. I think people misunderstand what networking is. Networking isn't just about what this person do for me. It's about like establishing a relationship, because you have to understand that your career isn't just this internship. It isn't just this like job immediately. Like, and both people working in tech are probably going to cross paths at some point. So really just trying to like understand what they're about and have them understand what you're about, not just the small internship phase, and really trying to build a relationship where both of you are benefiting in one way or the other, like be it sharing ideas or being it just someone in the community to talk to about things. That's how you build the best references, because you're just building a relation, like a professional working relationship at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think initially I just wanted to network and then try to meet people. But then like, I just realized that I happen to know a lot of friends that are working at different companies. And I think the network just like start forming when you get to know more people and make friends with them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree again with all of them. I think building genuine relationships rather than just like talking to them for the sake of like networking. Like you can, if you try to put yourself like on the person you're asking a referral from, like if you put it on their side, like why would they want to refer you if like they literally just met you like 10 seconds ago? So yeah, like making genuine relationships and actually like keeping that relationship throughout like in a long time. I want to say like the first referral I got was from a friend like I met like 3 years ago, and our friendship just sustained. Like we kept on talking and like taking class together, and yeah, it's like they can actually say something to refer me. Like they can attest to the skills or like what projects I've worked on, and they can actually say something.
Oh, another thing I want to add is don't be afraid to ask for referrals. It's like normally people are very nice and they're willing to help you. So yeah, sometimes you may think, oh, I need to be very good friends with this person in order to ask a referral, but it doesn't need to be, I feel.
Yeah, definitely want to add on to that. Just try and make as many friends as possible, and you'll watch your network expand over time. Don't focus too much on expanding your network. Focus more on making friends. Once your network's expanded, you'll realize that you already have like so many people you can go ask for referrals. And like Imong said, people love giving out referrals. I think a lot of companies actually give bonuses if the person they referred get to the company. And so it's like several $1,000s of bonus money. So, a lot of people like giving referrals for that reason as well. So you could definitely help them out and when they help you out.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Considering that many people who will be starting positions at companies soon, which will most likely be virtual, how can we get the most out of them without in-person interaction?
Ooh, fun. I just switched teams, so I basically had to do all of this. Let's see. Honestly, most companies at this point have like figured out how remote work will sort of operate, and like people are getting used to it. So I wouldn't like worry too much about it. You're already past like the everyone's fumbling to figure things out stage. But you like the same principles apply. Don't don't be afraid to send people messages and just like ask questions and talk to them. Everyone is more than happy to help out. Everyone understands that this is a really difficult and trying time, right? When you join, try to get as much support as you can from everyone. Like, also make sure that you are, putting yourself out there so they know that you exist. And I guess this goes back to like the last two questions, like the answers to the last two questions. Just try to be friends with people. Be nice. They're your coworkers, right? But they're probably like the same people. They're like similar to you. So just be nice. Talk to them. If you like playing board games or something, try to organize an event or two. Really helps. And yeah.
Yeah, one thing I saw being done really well by someone new on our team was we didn't have any game nights, and they were just like, hey, let's play on a Minecraft server. And on their first week, they literally they asked everyone if they had like time available just to talk for like an hour or 30 minutes. And then on Friday, they had like a Minecraft party where everyone was just trying to slay the Ender Dragon. It was just fun. And I know him by name now. Everyone knows that he's in the office and he's passionate about this. And it's just like really finding opportunities to really just show that you're present, you're present, you're engaged, and you want to engage others.
I absolutely love that story because usually, so what happens at Amazon a lot, I'm told by a whisper in the wind that the person who asked this question is going to Amazon. And so I think it's very typical for like Amazon and probably a lot of other companies to have like once a month, like, usually I guess in normal circumstances have like a once a month hike or something like that, especially up in Seattle. So be the person that, makes that virtual, right? Like be the person that's like, let's go, on a Minecraft server, right? For example, and definitely show that initiative and be like, I'm someone that you want to know, that's cool to hang around, reflecting back on the last question that you want to give a referral to. So just, yeah.
One thing I think that's really helpful that helped me, I did my onboarding virtually. And then I think one thing that's very helpful is schedule like maybe at least one 30-minute meeting with each member of your team. It's like my team is very large. We have 20 people. And then although I see them almost every day in the meetings or like in message chat, it still makes, I think it's still like very beneficial to have a one-on-one meeting with them, like just FaceTime and then talk, so you can get to them more as like a person. I think that really helps.
So yeah, I want to add to that. I posted a giant list of games, by the way, inside the chat. So if anyone needs ideas on what you can do with your coworkers, feel free to check that out. But I want to add on to what Imong said about one-on-one meetings. I've had some pretty amazing relationships formed from one-on-one meetings, even online, even in Zoom calls. Like just a week ago, I got to have my second meeting with the father of the internet, who's an employee at Google. So you'd be surprised at like how the type of meetings you can get if you just send out emails to whoever you're interested in talking about and just asking them like genuinely, like if you can just get to know them. And that's something I'm just gonna recommend. Just anyone you want to get to know, just send them an email or send them a message and just schedule a meeting, and you can learn so much about them in just a short conversation.
Yeah, so I was thinking like you could be more proactive in like scheduling stuff. Like one of the things I was taught when I first came to Google to work full time was just like their calendar is everything that you should look at. It's usually a good start to find like a time that both of you can meet up. That, or if you're not that aggressive yet, like I think it would be best to talk to your manager so they can help you schedule it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, what Carl means, to explain more about what Carl said, everyone's calendar is public in Google, so you can see what anyone's up to at any time, so you can know when they're free. So if you're gonna, yeah, just to give an explanation of what he means by looking at people's calendar.
Okay. So then I'll move on to the next question. Help, the recruiter of my dream company seems bored of my pitch or conversation. What do I do to recover?
Okay. So if you don't feel like you're vibing with your recruiter, just slowly work on a topic change, but also realize that if this conversation is going terribly, it's not the end of the world. And even if that's your dream company and the pitch is going terribly, it's not the end of the world. There are plenty more opportunities to apply. You could really apply like for the rest of your lifetime up until you retire. So there's plenty more opportunities, and just one recruiter's opinion isn't going to necessarily make or break the difference on whether or not you're ever going to get into this company. So please realize that.
Another thing I'd like to add to that is kind of like trying to I've definitely had interactions with recruiters where you can definitely see we're not clicking, and I've sometimes made the mistake of trying to like push into another conversation immediately, almost like unnaturally. But if I see that things are completely out of control, like this isn't going to work, asking for other avenues to contact the recruiting team is important. Like finding another connection to that particular team or company, be it through, oh, is there like another portal I could look at where I can send my application? Or are they like other recruiters that are, or like, are there other recruiters who are coming on different tours? And remembering that recruiter's name so that when you talk to this new recruiter, you can be like, oh yes, I initially spoke to so-and-so and they seemed like interested in this. So it shows that you like learned a bit from that previous experience, but then talk about what you're passionate about, and hopefully things click over a bit better with this recruiter. Because at the end of the day, recruiting is essentially just like speed dating. Sometimes it clicks and sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of the time that's just out of your control. So just taking what you can from that limited experience and realizing, yeah, as Emily said, it's like not the end of the world. There'll be another chance.
Oh, and one thing I want to add to that is it's okay to get in line and talk to a different recruiter if there's multiple, or like try and talk to someone else. I think one event in particular that I want to that I would advise is that no one here is an Apple employee, by the way. So I think I'm allowed to say this, but at the Apple recruiting event, our school hosts Apple recruiting career fairs like every quarter now, because we've become a target school for Apple recently. And they always tell you only talk to one recruiter and then you have to get out the room. But honestly, even though they tell you that and those are the official rules, you can go talk to as many recruiters as you want. So my advice, if you ever go to that event, is go get in line for like whoever, as many people as you can. Yeah. It sucks for other students, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Most people do generalist roles when they're new grads. So how do you get specialized roles like machine learning engineer?
So I'm a machine learning engineer here at Microsoft. And the reason why I was able to get that was purely because of my internship and the conditions I set after my internship. It's really hard to apply to a new company just coming in like that. So if you have the opportunity to intern at a particular company or at any company really, and you're negotiating with your you're negotiating with your potential new employer, just like leveraging that and being like, hey, this is what I really want to focus on. So there aren't too many opportunities, but also like understanding that even if you come in as a general software engineer, there's opportunities to move. It might take a bit longer, but don't be too impatient on it. But yeah, the only way I was able to do it was because I leveraged like my last 3 internships at Microsoft. So.
So there's certainly nothing wrong with coming in as a generalist, because like first of all, you have to like ramp up on like the company first. Like most of the times you spent on like when you start, it's just getting to know the company, getting to know your team, getting to know like the culture there. So I think it's actually good to start as a generalist because you don't worry about anything else other than trying to integrate into the company. Just like when you start college, like you don't immediately take your upper divs. You take some basic classes so you can like slowly integrate into the culture there. So with that said, like internal mobility is like a thing, especially in large companies. Like you stay in a role for like maybe a year or two or hopefully more. And then at that point, you can feel confident enough to find an opening at another team. And that's when you talk to your manager. And that's when you like formulate a plan on how you can transfer to that team.
Okay. If anyone else has anything to add, I'll just move on to the next question. Okay. How do you evaluate whether to take an off-season internship or not? Is it worth delaying graduation for an unknown company internship?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So it's two-part. How do you evaluate whether to take an off-season internship or not? And is it worth delaying graduation for an unknown company internship?
I guess for the first part of the question, the evaluation process is pretty simple as an international student. If there are any international students in the panel, you really can't take an off-season internship. It's a lot of trouble to do that. Like, I would not recommend trying to get the school to allow you to do that because it's like a logistical and almost legal minefield. So just don't. That's all I gotta say.
And then as for whether or not it's worth it to take an off-season internship, um, personally, I think oftentimes it's worth it if it's for like a notable company that's going to really benefit your career. At the end of the day, the reason why most of us are going to college is so that we can get a job after college. And keeping that in mind, if an internship is going to get you your dream job or like a really good job after college, then in my opinion, it's worth delaying graduation for. If it's for a completely unknown company, that's fine as well, as long as you think it can set you on the right path to getting a job after graduation, like a good job after graduation. Remember, at the end of the day, you're in college largely so that you can find the place for you after college.
I think one common way to do off-season internship is like you get two offers for or two or more offers for the next year, and then you convert one so that you can get more experience. Well, I really wanted to do that, but I'm international, so I couldn't.
Okay, does anyone have anything else to add? Okay, we can move on to the next question. How do you reach out to alumni for referral on LinkedIn?
I tried reaching out to an alumni by saying "Go Trident," and they didn't know what that was. And then I was like, "I'm UCSD." Realistically, we don't have the best alumni communication community. So reaching out to an alumni through an organization like ACM, even though y'all are new, or CSCS or something like that, would maybe be a little easier. Like trying to reach out to your organization's alumni group would definitely work better. But also cold messaging people from UCSD from UCSD on LinkedIn, there's like no shame. You're trying to do what you got to do to some degree, but yeah, it's a bit difficult. Our school spirit isn't the best.
Yeah, I totally agree. Be bold, just send messages. I usually accept whatever friend request from on LinkedIn of those who studied or who's still studying at UCSD. So yeah, I read those messages.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna counterpoint this one and say, don't actually just like message random people. At least try if you find someone you're like mildly connected to, whether you like, you know, y'all part of HKN, find someone who was in HKN before. Find like a friend of a friend, right? The whole point of like reaching out to people is that, you know, you can get something out of them, usually like a photo, and then people are just a lot more comfortable if they can actually like, they know something about your background, they know something about you, there's like some common ground. So I would actually advise against just like messaging random people, as in don't like message me because you won't get anything out of it. But if you say like, hey, I'm in HKN and like I know this other person, much higher probability of me like saying like, oh, you're a cool person, I will help you.
Yeah,
also
I
good.
think.
Go ahead.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm just gonna say like, I've not looked at my LinkedIn since I graduated, or at least when I found a job, because that's what I use LinkedIn for, to find one. But now that I have one, I don't really need it as much. So I would suggest like get someone, like a middleman first. Like just ask them to um, introduce you. Yeah, yeah, because not everyone is just comfortable talking to strangers, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add on to pretty much what everyone said. I think the best way to connect to alumni is definitely through org events, because a lot of alumni were part of orgs in the past, and even though like in org like ACM is new, for example, we're still connected with alumni just because there are like official alumni boards in the CSC and the ECA department where we can pull alumni from, and so that's a really good way to get in touch with alumni. I'm actually the EC alumni chair, so if anyone wants to talk directly to EC alumni, just let me know. Or not chair, the student liaison. Okay, yeah, the alumni student, EC alumni board student liaison. So I'm the undergrad representative. So, but if anyone needs, but besides that, when it comes to adding people randomly on LinkedIn, LinkedIn always advises you to add a note when it comes to connecting with people, and I really advise that you use it, because I've made some pretty good connections with people, even though we might not have a mutual connection, like Carl was talking about. We might have something in common, and that's a good way to get people to notice you. For example, there is a newly elected ACM international president, and the way I got her attention was just by telling her that I'm founded an ACM student chapter in my LinkedIn note, and she just added me on LinkedIn today. And that's like a really good way to just show someone that like you're connected somehow with them.
At the end of the day, you have to remember, like, I mean, right now I just checked. I have like 79 outstanding LinkedIn requests because I haven't checked it in a couple of months. My manager has told me he's had up to like 210. So like having a middleman or having something that like at least connects you in some way or form is just definitely a lot better than going in cold.
Okay. I'll just move on to the next one at a time. Is our system design questions asked for you at interview?
Okay, like I don't want to like leak how the interview process works for people. So I'm gonna say ask other people who have interviewed for said companies and see if they have received such questions. That is usually a good indicator of whether or not you will get one. But also it sometimes depends on like, okay, like kind of relevant. It depends on like the level that your position that you're applying for is gonna be at. And for new grads, it's almost never a real concern unless it's like a specialized role.
I'm just gonna give my experience. Like I've had like 2 interviews for internships and I didn't get any, and then 3 for full time and only one of them had it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Which is better, applying through referral or cold messaging the hiring manager on LinkedIn? Do you have success just applying online?
Working through a referral is basically like skipping the long line. It doesn't necessarily guarantee success in any way, but it does make things a lot quicker. And cold emails do work, like online portals do work. I don't want people to be discouraged from applying online. Like they do go through those. But if you find another avenue to advocate for you, the better.
And I think I agree with largely with that. And I think something that does stand out when it comes to big companies, or something you do have to note when it comes to big companies is even though referral does let you skip the line, realize that especially big companies, there's a lot of people who get referrals for them. And so even though you're skipping the line of people who didn't get referrals, you still are in line of with the people who got referrals, which is still a huge, huge line. So be aware of that, and don't be surprised if even with a referral you don't get far like in the process, just because unfortunately it's the nature of the situation. That being said, I think when it came to the interview process, what I did was I played the numbers game, and I used all of those methods. I cold emailed, I applied on online portals, and I used referrals. And my advice to anyone looking for an internship, whether it be a big company or a startup or any type of internship, is just play the numbers game. For your first internship or second internship, just be willing to play the numbers game. It's how job recruiting works.
I'm gonna have to say that's very correct because I've not gotten anything from career fairs, if I'm being honest. Like my internships and my full-time job I got through applying online.
Yeah, same. I've never had any success with career fair. I don't know why. Oh well, I would say Grace Hopper is pretty good. Well, even if you don't go, you can still put your resume in their resume database, and recruiters look at those. I think there's a higher chance. The first year, I applied to a lot of companies, like probably more than 50. Most of them I got rejected, and then some of them get interviews and some failed. And finally I did the team internship program, which is under Jacobs. That one's pretty helpful. And then once you get one internship, I think it's much easier to get like to pass the first round, to get an interview at least.
Yeah, I applied for 83 internships before I got my first one. So yeah, play the numbers game for sure.
I want to
kind
add
of like
to,
oh, sorry. I just wanted to follow it up with like a little side note. There's like another question that's similar, like how many jobs did you apply to before getting one? So yeah, if anyone wants to answer that one too, yeah, we can just answer that. Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
I want to continue on with what Imang said about Grace Hopper. I have had some successful school career fairs, but I think the best career fairs by far are the ones at conferences, because those are ones where the recruiters really like pull up at. And I posted a link to anyone who needs like a scholarship to go to a conference. And one thing to realize is oftentimes when it comes to going to these events, the school and different like groups around the world will pay for your trip. Last year, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to 8 conferences, and the majority of them are sponsored, whether it be by ACM, by IEEE, or by the Jacobs School of Engineering. And if any of you are Jacobs students, realize that every single year you get like $400 to travel to these conferences. And that's something that a lot of Jacobs students do not take advantage of. So take advantage of all of those applications. Really look into it. I posted one in the chat right now. So if you're a woman, you want to go to any ACM conference, it's in the chat. And also realize that ACM does sponsor Toppy and Grace Hopper scholarships in separate portals, so check that out too.
All right, I'll add a data point. Unlike everyone else here, I've only interviewed 5 times in my entire life. Somehow I snuck in and got a job. And the rest of this answer might be following a theme for tonight, but every single time I got like an interview is because I knew someone at the company / someone who knew the recruiter. So shout out to Record, thanks. But yeah, point TLDR being make friends, y'all in like HKN or ACM. That gives like a fantastic opportunity to get to know like a lot of people, right? So yeah, you take advantage of that while you can. College is like a fantastic place to just get to know as many people as possible because you'll be interacting with a lot of people. And that's honestly like the easiest way to get in and ahead of the line. And then, yeah, as like Imang and Emily mentioned, the next best option is always to go to like more like specialized recruiting events. So like Grace Hopper is like a fantastic option. Like Wake offers scholarships for that one. And so take advantage of all of these opportunities. Going to conferences is also definitely a really good place to go because not only will you interact with like recruiters who show up there, you will also have like a much higher probability of getting to know the engineers and just like fellow industry professionals who will share similar interests to you. So again, great place to go make new friends who will for sure help you in later in life.
I think specifically just to quickly address the question of how many jobs you applied to before you got your full-time or internship. I think that's kind of like asking how many times did you buy the lottery before you won, like, and it's like, it's a lottery where you can improve your chances by, having a referral, and it's one where you can hurt them by just randomly applying online, right? I'm actually closer to Aniket for my data point, right, where I've kind of probably applied to only like 10, 15 internships, and I won the Amazon lottery early, right? But then I know people have applied to like hundreds of internships every single cycle. So just kind of keep that in mind that I think we've said it, we've beaten this dead horse a lot, that it is a numbers game. And I think that question is a little bit, flawed in that a lot of different people have a lot of different experiences in that.
I think important part to also caveat, like the numbers element of it is like learn from each application experience. If you're sending the same resume and getting rejected with the same resume, that's not gonna help you. Like really try find feedback in any form, be it emailing the people that you got to an interview and you didn't get the job, like emailing for feedback. Sometimes they'll give it to you, sometimes they won't, but like at least try. And once you get that feedback loop going, you improve your ability to interview, you improve your ability to apply, and you learn a lot more about the process. As soon as you learn about how the process works, it makes it a lot easier to navigate in the future. So like, just like spraying, praying doesn't work. It's got to be like a smart, intentional application process.
I want to add to that. Definitely when you're in the application season, play strategically and keep statistics on everything that you do. So what I did was I had a spreadsheet laid out with all the companies I applied to, the different statuses, and I also kept track of like where I was getting rejected from, and then also like notes on how my interview went and possible reasons why I might have gotten rejected. And one really good way to know why you got rejected is also ask the company or ask the recruiter or ask the engineer who interviewed you, like why, for some feedback on how your interview went or on some feedback on how your application went. And oftentimes that'll help you out a lot with figuring out like what's working and what's not. And also I had like a giant Google Drive with not only the spreadsheet that I talked about, but also folders containing all of my cover letters and all of my resumes. I made multiple resumes for all the companies I applied for. So play strategically and stay very organized. That'll help you out a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Luyanda. Like, try to get a lot of feedback on your resume first and then start applying. Like, I went to the career services, CSS, and then I got feedback from there. I gave it to a few of my friends for more feedback, and then at that point, I was just playing the numbers game. Like, I think for like my first year in UCSD, like I applied to like probably 100 already. Like I'm not like too tech savvy at that point yet. Like instead of a spreadsheet, I had like a notebook. Not recommended, but yeah, it's like a lot.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that we received from the form. With that, we can move on to a live Q&A. So that means that anyone who's a guest can either put a question in the chat, or if you're bold enough, can turn on your mic and ask the question. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. Whenever anyone is ready, you can ask a question.
Yes, I've got one. So I suppose this will apply, is more of a question for Luyanda for anyone else, but it can be a bit more general. In the case of getting into a role in a company where you want to pivot to a position where your experience is not necessarily minimal, but you might have only class experience, such as, for example, I've taken a number of machine learning courses, but I don't have any like internship or career experience there. What are some of the best ways to try to pivot into a role like that? And perhaps in general, pivoting into roles where you don't have a lot of experience. Kind of seems like developing relationships is a good one, and working on projects is a good one. But in your words, what are the best ways to go about that?
Yeah, so one of the ways, when people say like doing projects, that could be very variable. Like some of the projects I have that I used to have on my Git were like ML based experiments using like certain architectures or like fast AI, etc. But also joining open source communities and contributing to tools like that like shows that you're really willing to get engaged with the community as a whole. Just being like really specific and really focused on what you're trying to present, in the sense that like I want to focus, like people use this term, like they use ML as a really buzzword. So when you mention that, you have to know what you're talking about, what in particular, and what you're trying to gain from working at a very specialized technical area. So I would say like looking for open source communities that you can open source code bases that you can contribute to. One of them that I contributed to initially was something called Fast AI, and just like finding ways to bring that presence so that when you talk to an interviewer about it, it doesn't seem like it's just a buzzword to you. It seems like it's something that you're really thinking about engaging in fully. I would also suggest just getting used to the habit of reading tons of research papers and getting really engaged on your like Twitter community. There's a lot of ML. There are a lot of like researchers who post a lot on Twitter about the work that they're doing and ask for comments, and contacting them directly through that and just asking for time to speak has helped me a lot too. So yeah, just really being focused in the projects that you pursue and the community that you try to develop around being an ML engineer, because it is a buzzword. So you just have to show what you know what you're talking about more than anything else.
There's also a question in the chat for you.
Okay, so with regards to choosing a technical PM role, I think more it had to do with a lot of the culture at Tesla. So Tesla has this like very strict culture where if you aren't necessary for something to be done, then you won't be included in the team. And they found that a lot of product management work can be overseen by a more technical leading role. So there are a lot of other organizations that focus more on talking about like tech PM and PM and what the differences are, and just understanding what those differences are before applying to those positions is important, because they are different in nature, like the skill set that you require to do them. But really, it was more of a function of just like Tesla predominantly hires tech PMs, so I had to be a tech PM, and that needed me to learn different skills.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. Can you apply for both internship and full-time roles at the same company? I can't decide if I want to go do a master, so I want to have both options.
So at least for Amazon, I can speak about Amazon. They'll encourage you to apply for a full-time role. And then if you choose to do your master's after that, they will kind of automatically transition you into an internship. So it would only be one application.
Yeah, Facebook basically does the same thing. There's like actually automated systems that will try to figure out if you're applying for both things, and eventually a recruiter will get upset at you for wasting their time. So don't actually do that. Just go for full time, and then if you can't do full time anymore, everyone's like always more than happy to convert that to an internship and then let you come back afterwards, see how that turns out. You can do your master's, and then they will consider you for full time again. And usually that process, like the second time around, is much easier to just get that full time role nailed down. Yes. Yes. I would advise you to just apply for full time. Don't bother with doing internships.
Okay. Oh, okay. We have one more question in the Zoom chat.
Oh, you mean what it's like working with people who are like older than you because you were actually just a child when you first show up to work? It is a fantastic opportunity because people know a lot of things and you don't know anything. So be a sponge, absorb as much experience as you can. Also, I say like old people, but everyone at Facebook's like pretty young, I think. So, and I'm pretty sure that trend applies throughout. Like most of tech tends to skew towards a younger demographic.
I would say it's a bit different over here in Microsoft land. Not because we're an old company. I want people to stop thinking that. Like, we're fun, we're hip, we're cool. I work at Xbox. It's fun. We play games from time to time. Sometimes I play games with people's kids, which is kind of weird, who are like my age too. That's like strange sometimes. But for the most part, yeah, like there's a lot of learning to be done, not just from like a technical perspective, but also just from a understanding work life, understanding priorities, understanding just how like the world works outside of the little bubble of university that you've lived in for a while. So really like take that in, and yeah, that's been one of the best things. A lot of the people I work with are kind of like mentors in that way, teaching me how to do more adult stuff.
Does anyone want to address the work-life balance question in the Zoom chat? I think that's what we're on.
Okay, I think we can all just like go and talk about it. I would say my work-life balance is A+. I don't like to work that much, and I like to go live like do like the life part of my life. So I do actively try to make sure that I'm not like doing like 50 or 60 hours a week, hanging out at work, grinding to code. That's just my opinion. Some people like to not do that and they just like to work all the time. kind of your life, that's how you want to live it, totally okay. And yeah, you'll actually just see that. It's just everyone's just gonna have their own routine, and everyone's just gonna kind of jump back and forth depending on how they feel. But overall, like Facebook seems pretty good about encouraging you to not overwork yourself.
I think it also comes down to personally being accountable to managing that expectation. These companies will work you for all you've got if you let them. Like, if you're not going to take the time for yourself, they will encourage you that there are resources, but no one's going to take the resources for you. They will make you aware of the sick days and the off days that you have available. But unless you're consciously taking care of yourself, like, no one else will, or you'd be lucky if people do, like, so work-life balance really comes down to where you put your foot down, at least at Microsoft. At Tesla, let me just say this. They didn't call it work-life balance, but work-life integration. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's all. 70-hour work weeks. I didn't say that, but sometimes,
I want to add on to what everyone said, and I agree with pretty much everyone here. A lot of times your work-life balance is dependent on you. Really, if you want to take time off work, it's up to you. And oftentimes, I think most tech companies don't actually pay by the hour, but they pay salary instead. Even when it comes to internships, at least for my internship, I'm paid weekly. And so that means I can go work like 10, 12 hours a day if I want to, or I can work like 5. And there were instances in my internship where I did a bit of both. It was just depending on how my project was going. And oftentimes it just is dependent on how you're feeling, whether or not you can do the work. As long as you get the work done and you get your project done and you get whatever your manager expects from you done, you can really work as little as you want, as long as you're working very efficiently. And I think a lot of people will argue that like 5 hours of efficient work is much more effective than like 12 hours of inefficient work. And yeah, also a lot of these companies have a bunch of perks that really help, like, contribute to that work-life balance. And so there are clubs for you to join so you can meet other employees. There are lots of activities you can do with other employees in case you're like in the middle of Silicon Valley with like nothing else to do. And so there's a lot of benefits from that as well.
Okay,
and,
the next.
and can I add on to Kendall's clarification? At least for me, I was an intern. So as an intern, I spent more days after work hanging out with people than I did adulting and cooking. But that's also because my company gave me free food. And so I didn't have to worry about the adulting or cooking part that much. And so I just took advantage of having fun this summer.
Okay, yeah. Kendall's question is, do you spend more days after work hanging out with people or more days adulting and cooking and stuff? In case anyone else wants to answer that.
What is the definition of adulting here? Because I would say like managing your time is like definitely like #1 adulting skill that you kind of have to learn. But to talk about spending time with people from work, it honestly really depends on like your team. Like, so if you're expecting your team to like always like hang out with you and do stuff, you're kind of going to be disappointed because everyone has like their own life and they all have things going on. So don't go in with that expectation that like your entire team is just gonna like constantly like hang out and like do fun things. Like they'll agree to like board games like once every other week, but in my experience, like pushing people to do more than that tends to cause people to just like drop off and not show up for anything. But again, good place to, especially at Facebook, we get like a lot of perks and there's like a lot of clubs and stuff. So if you do want to hang out with coworkers after work, there are more than ample opportunities to find people who like the same things that you do and then go hang out with them. And I do that pretty often. Well, not right now. That would be unsafe, but I used to once upon a time.
Yeah,
I wanna just,
oh, sorry, never mind. Go ahead.
you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. During my internship, I would say like I did more of the hanging out with people than like the adulting stuff, but mostly because like I would try to um, plan the whole week at during the weekend, so that way I can hang out with my coworkers during like after hours. It was also like mostly because like I was fortunate enough to actually be living in the same complex as most of my coworkers, which is kind of cool considering like we have the exactly same commute. So that made it much easier. But for like teams that are less um less interactive, I think it's mostly going to be on you if you want to try socializing with them after. Like I talked to my mentor here, and she was telling me how if I wanted to hang out with people, I have to be the one to initiate that because um, they wouldn't want to. They wouldn't know that you would want to hang out with them unless you actually do something about it.
Yeah. I also want to add that I think when it comes to getting to know your team, socializing with your team, don't have extremely high expectations. A lot of times your team will see you in a work sense, but that's completely fine. Often like you're placed into a team, and if you don't have the same interests as the rest of your teammates, that's something that you should accept, and it's completely fine. It's completely normal. You can do like a board game night like once a week, like Aniket was saying. You can try and connect with them, but don't expect them to be your best friends. But one of the huge perks of working at one of the big companies that like we all do, is that there's so much people that you can meet at the company. And because of that, even if you're not friends, you're not close with your team, at the very least, you can be close to someone else at your company. And so just join any groups you can, and then reach out and see who in the company shares the same interests as you. And that's a really good way of making friends.
Another comment on just like the adulting aspect of it all. I think once you leave college, you start to realize things take a lot longer to do and days are kind of a bit slower. Like you'll come back from work sometimes and you just be tired. You just make food and go to sleep. Don't beat yourself up over that. Sometimes it is just the way it is. So don't have like the super high expectation that it's going to be the life of the party. I would say rather prioritizing getting things right, like figuring out a good routine so that you're making sure you eat and you stay healthy and you're doing the things that make you happy. Like really, and taking care of your mental health. A lot of the things that people take for granted that are okay or easier to manage in college, being able to take ownership and manage those by yourself is really important, because you realize like it's no longer like a college sprint. You're not trying to pull as many all-nighters as possible and stuff like that. Like you're in it for the long game. So start developing good habits that will carry you through.
I think there's a question from William in the chat. Can we answer that one first and then get to the PM question?
Okay. I will qualify Imang's statements for her and say that full-time interviews are like not really that much harder. You might get like an extra interview, but that's about it. Not like they have like a magic bucket of like intern questions and then magic bucket of like extra hard full-time questions. And especially when you like, and this like really applies when you are doing like a new grad full-time position. They really don't expect that much from you, right? Like they understand that you just graduated. This is like probably the first time that you're ever going to have like a real job, and they factor that in already. So they'll make sure that you can be successful in a professional environment, but beyond that, not much more. So you will definitely not just get like super hard questions just because you chose to apply for like the full-time position.
Let me just add that there's a rumor that I will neither confirm nor deny that at least Amazon has pretty much the same interview process for interns as they do their full-time. So just keep that in mind.
I think it depends on the company. Like when I say it's harder, it's because, like, for example, the full-time interviews I got are like 5 or 6 interviews back to back in person. Like it's definitely like more than just, for example, 2 phone interviews for an internship. That's what I mean. It's not that the questions are harder.
So I can answer Tiffany's question. With regards to SWE versus PM internships, in general, it is like a fair assumption to make that they are more software engineering positions, like software internships, than they are PM internships. Most of the time, that's what I get told. And sometimes they even like do reserve PM roles for full time, but that doesn't mean they don't completely, like, they don't exist. They are quite a few there are quite a few PM programs, especially at the big companies that we're at. I know like Microsoft has one. I know that Google has one. I'm not sure if Amazon has one or Facebook. I think Facebook has one too, but they are there. They exist.
Yeah, I definitely want to agree with that. Google actually has 2 PM internship programs, as EPM and TPM, that you can apply to. So keep that in mind as well. There's definitely roles out there for you. And even though with PM internships, there's less PM internship roles, there's also a lot less people applying. So you have that going for you as well. It's not going to be like the same giant pool like there is with software engineering. Let's answer the stack question. Worked in a team where you don't know the language of a stack at all. Is that okay?
I've worked on teams where I don't know the stack, and what it really takes is just, this is going to happen throughout your career. Learning how to learn is like more important than knowing what you currently know really well, because very often some of the things that you will be doing, it'll be the first time like you're doing that, like, and as you move further or you move from team to team, like you just have to learn how to learn and figure out what style works best for you. For me, it's just getting used to like reading tons and tons of documentation. Like I'll sit down a weekend, I'll take all the documentation I can, and I'll try like build something, like even if it's a junk project, just to kind of get a grasp of what I'm working with. You have to do that in your own time too, because but there isn't just an expectation for you to know everything. Like I don't want anyone to be concerned or disheartened from entering or trying a position because they're worried that they don't know everything. A lot of people learn throughout their career, and you have to learn throughout your career or else you won't move forward. So just getting used to being able to learn and figuring out what style works best for you is best.
Yeah, and adding on to that, one thing to realize is a lot of principles that apply to one programming language or one skill will apply to learning another skill. And so use that to your advantage. And also realize that a lot of times, I don't know too much about the other companies, but I know at least at Google, they provide a ton of resources to help you learn new skills. So there are like Python classes you can take if you don't know Python. There are all sorts of different online resources and content that they provide you in order to help you learn. When I started at Google as an intern, I was familiar with the language and the stack that I was using, but what I wasn't familiar with was a lot of the tools that Google uses, because it's a really weird company and they develop their own tools for some reason instead of using the stuff that everyone else uses. But what's really nice is that they have a lot of workshops and a lot of mentors that like help guide you through learning all these different tools that they use. And so take advantage of whatever resources the company provides you as well, and ask around too.
Okay, I'm gonna add to this. So background, like when I first joined, my first project was in a language like literally no one else outside Google uses. Like it's something called Blaze, or I guess Bazel outside. And literally I couldn't have learned it outside of Google because like they developed this stuff. So I was asking my mentor like how do I learn this, and like how it's like how do I learn it fast, just like what you asked. So one of the super concrete steps that she gave me was just like give yourself like an hour to read documentation, and then at that point you just have to keep like stop yourself, because at some point you can just like get so deep into documentation like you just don't know what you're learning anymore. And the next step to that would just be looking at the commits like other people made. So like okay, whose file is this, and like what was the history in that. And that's usually how you can try to mimic what other people do, and in that process you start learning really fast.
I guess we can move on to Jaden's question then in the Zoom chat.
I would love to answer this one. I love teaching interns this question, like how to do this properly. Honestly, like it's always okay to ask for help. What is really important is like how you ask for help. Like a lot of time you gotta realize that like the people you're asking questions to tend to also be working on things, and they tend to be busy. So, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to help you. They definitely want to help you. But so usually what I like to tell people is that when you ask a question, you gotta say, hey, this is what I'm doing. So like have like a one-line summary of like the problem you're facing. Talk about what you tried to do and what the outcome of that was, and end on like a really specific question about what you need help with, right? Just like following this format is like will just increase the chance that you get an answer so much more than just being like, oh, I can't figure this out, can someone help me? As for like how much time you should spend, just like you don't need to like grind like multiple hours. Just like do like if you get stuck, save yourself time and just ask someone the question. Just yeah. Just don't waste your own time. Realize that your time is really precious too. Like as engineers, we get paid like a ridiculous amount of money. So don't just like think that you have to like grind your way through it, try to do like every single thing exhaustively. No, just you try one thing, it doesn't work, ask like a good question to someone who does know, and they will either know the answer themselves or they will point you to someone else who does know the answer. And iterating on this process will save everyone just like a tremendous amount of time and make everyone happier at the end of the day.
Yeah, I want to add on to that. So when I first started my internship, what I was doing, I knew that you're supposed to ask a lot of questions. And so what I was doing was I would keep a list of all the questions I wanted to ask my manager, and then periodically ask him all the questions at once. But within a week, the PM on my team, he saw that my manager who sat across from me had left the room. And then she came over to me and she gave me like a really, really good piece of advice that kind of changed the course of the rest of my internship. And she was just like, realize that, oh, my manager's name is John, by the way. And she was just like, realize that it's John's job to help you. Like it is his job to help you. So if you're stuck on anything for 10 minutes, don't even wait an hour to ask him it. Just ask him it every 10 minutes. If you're stuck on it for just a minute, just ask him. Just bother him as much as you want. And I love her so much to this day because that helped me out so much. So realize that don't be scared to ask for help. Like again, like Anna said, your time is just as valuable as any other engineers, and so feel free to reach out like the moment you're stuck. I mean, of course, spend like a bit of time at least like look up on Stack Overflow, Google your answer real quick, but you know, don't be scared of asking for help like quickly.
So
Uh,
yeah, go for it.
go
Go
ahead.
for it.
Just like a quick add-on to that, just usually when you're stuck, try to write down why you're stuck and like try to ask the question, but like don't send it yet. And usually while you're writing it, you'll figure out like what you need to do, and at that point you'll find out too like how long do you need to spend on it. That's how I got that.
On the advice to your third year self when looking back, I would say, if anything, work hard early to securing your post-graduation future, but then really take time to like enjoy college and like let that settle in. It's like a very unique experience to have all your buddies living super close to you, and the only big concern is like if I'm gonna hand in this assignment on time, etc. But I would say like there would be definitely like two divisions of people who towards the end of their third year were stressing way too much because they hadn't really been preparing for post graduation, and you don't want to be in that box because it is tough and it makes things a bit more stressful than they should. But you don't want to be like fixating on things that you don't have to and failing to acknowledge that like I'm nearly graduating. This whole like 4 year bubble is nearly over, and just focus on. I would focus more on just like solidifying some of the friendships, doing things I've wanted to do, going to the beach a bit more in San Diego. San Diego's beautiful. I miss the beach. Seattle's cloudy a lot. But yeah, really just enjoying it, working really hard initially to secure your post graduation future, and then just enjoying college because it is a unique experience.
Advice that I would have given my third year self is I wish I slept more my third year and I had more of a structure and routine laid out. I think in my third year I was sleeping on average like three hours a day or something, and I was just letting my health go because I was really determined to find an internship. What ended up happening was I got a lot of interviews, but I'd go into my interviews super stressed out or super sleep deprived, having grinded like lead code like for hours and hours beforehand. And so I if you're a third year, I recommend that like realize that not getting an internship your last summer is not too big of a deal, and you should take care of yourself because and oftentimes taking care of yourself will help you out in the internship hunt or the job hunt way more than it'll hurt you.
Okay, Stanley has a question in the chat. What's some general advice for an incoming TPM intern?
Stanley, I would say really focusing on understanding your team, understanding what the purpose and the goal of your teams are, understanding the components that go into performing the job well, and building the skills required. Like as with any internship, I would suggest if you can and have access to talking to your manager right now, asking them if there's any type of tool, special like scheduling thing or way of looking at the code or anything like that that they use that you can learn about, and then like finding ways to get ready and prepared for that. And understanding your team really well also goes a long way for TPM. So yeah.
Okay, if there are no more questions from the chat, there's one more. Oh, there's another thing. Tiffany.
With regards to our question, so the question is having a security clearance an advantage in terms of trying to obtain an internship from any of these big companies? And I want to say generally no, just because our companies typically don't work too heavily with the government. That's more of an advantage for if you're going for big defense companies. So companies like Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin, companies like that. That being said, personally, I just wouldn't put it on my application because of that. I don't think the companies think it's like, make or break or like too big of a deal, but defense companies definitely do.
Yeah, as Emily mentioned, I got my full-time revoked Fulton gunman because I don't have security clearance, and I also can't work at SpaceX. So it kind of sucks. As an international student, like I got an internship there, but like I couldn't take it because of stuff like that. So I don't know how to deal with that one. Just kind of a bummer. Just go into a company that is not really defense based, and you should be fine.
Yeah, a lot of those companies don't take international students, so I recommend asking before and before like applying or something.
Okay, we have a question from Winnie. Advice for international students?
Don't let being an international student be a vice. In the sense, leverage it as a strength. Like often people, there's definitely a lot of hoops you got to jump through, and it sucks sometimes. But just don't picture yourself that way. And if anything, try leverage it. I use the word global perspective a lot in my resumes. Recruiters go wow for that. They're like, wow, look at him, so global. Like I'm just from South Africa. Like it's not that special. So try leverage it as much as you can, but don't let it be a vice on you. Yeah, that's all I can say on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think except for those companies, those logistical like problems, like they don't hire international students, I don't think there's really any difference. I just yeah.
Also, I'm not international student, but I want to add that a lot of these companies have international offices. And I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can apply to internships in like other countries as well. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Iman, beyond that.
I've actually done some research on that. so it really depends on like whether the company willing to put you in that location. Most of them don't.
What if it's a location in your home country?
If it's home in your home country, then it's fine. But the interview process are usually like different, or it's a separate interview process for a job like in other countries. Yeah.
It's also important to keep in mind that I mean, I'm not too sure how much of an impact that the increase in remote work will have in this, but just a lot of teams aren't based everywhere. So even if your company is there, the particular team you're looking for may not operate from that country. But I mean, with remote work, who's to say what's next? Are we still gonna have offices after this? I know Amazon's full work from home now, if you want, I think, or Facebook, one of the two.
I'm gonna qualify that and say, don't actually just start working from wherever you feel like it, because there are lots of legal implications to your visa. So yeah, actually kind of be careful if you're an international student. Don't like get caught up in this like, oh, everyone's working remotely and I can just be whatever I want hype. Yeah, a lawyer will eventually need to get involved in that. So just be careful.
Okay, we have one question from the forum. Is it best to apply early, and when did you start to apply?
Yes, it is always best to apply early. And right now, big end companies have started to move their recruiting cycle up way, way early for some odd reason. And so I was personally starting to apply as early as July last year, although I know that Microsoft was already even like companies like Microsoft were already interviewing at UCSD as early as March, strangely enough. And so the sooner the better always, just because it like we said earlier, like you're kind of trying to get to the front of the line. Well, in this case, if you're the earliest to apply, you're literally at the front of the line. So yeah, as soon as you can. Oh, and a lot of companies are already starting to open up 2021 internships. So keep that in mind.
There's a question about classes. What classes at UCSD did each of you find most useful or relevant, whether it being math or CS? I actually, my favorite class was EC 140, 140A and 140B, which is product engineering. So in that class, we learned we basically learned like how to build an IoT product, and we find a problem and then we interview people and then we design the solution and then we prototype it. So it was really fun. I think you can take it as an elective maybe, but with this current situation, I don't know like how that class work.
So general college advice, don't like over index into I have to set myself up for success. College is like a really good, like nice, like you have like a massive safety net, and you should really take this as an opportunity to explore the things that you might be interested in. So when you're thinking about classes, honestly, just like go for the ones that you think you will enjoy the most. And if you find something that you don't like working on, you can go forward from there. But yeah, don't spend too much time being like, oh, this class will like help me with my job a lot, because more often than not, classes in school don't really teach you all of the skills that you need. Like, sure, you can write code, but like you can also learn to do that online. So just if there's like one thing you should really learn at school, it should be how to learn. Right? That's like is probably like the most transferable skill that I have. Is just being able to articulate your thoughts and being able to ask questions and find resources when you are stuck on a problem is generally just like the best skill. And if I see like an intern that does really good at it, I am always just overjoyed. So be like that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
Does anybody else have anything to add to that? I think this is the last question. So yeah, anyone else has any other thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
So I want to add on to that, and I pretty much largely agree with everything. I think you'll realize that a lot of the classes and a lot of the information you're given in school isn't going to apply to your specific job in industry. Like you don't know exactly what job you're getting in industry yet, and you don't know what projects you're going to work on, and you don't know what's like crazy programming languages they might throw at you. They might give you something that's like completely internal, exclusive to them. And so because of that, it's much more important that you focus on, learning to learn. That being said, I do think there are some classes at UCSD that are pretty general and pretty like that can be applied towards like multiple different areas. I know in particular the one class I wish I paid more attention on was CSC 101, the algorithms class, just because I know that I chose not to do my homework assignment for that class one day to focus on prepping for a big N interview. And I ended up getting that homework question on a big N interview. Well, that exact big N interview was my homework question. And so I think classes like that, classes that focus on data structures and algorithms, where you're likely going to be interviewed on those concepts, I think those are generally helpful classes.
From what I feel like, I think like the core classes are pretty good, or like for what you should really make sure you get a solid foundation on. Like surprisingly 12 and like 11, I guess, is pretty good. And now that they added like an option for having like classes like database and like um software development, software engineering, 110. That's also like pretty good, like just having a good grasp of like what they are.
Okay. I think if that's everything else, I think now would be a good time to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming out, everyone, especially the panelists, taking your time out of the day to be with us today to help answer all of these questions that we have from UCSD undergrads and graduate students. We really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully enjoyed everyone. And yeah, thank you from HKN and ACM for showing up.
Bye, y'all.
All right.
Bye.
This is fun.
Goodbye.
Bye.